Friends, have you ever looked at the story of Joseph and been struck by a single burning question? Why did a man so clearly beloved by God, so blessed with divine favor, have to endure so much suffering? Why was he thrown into a pit by his own brothers, sold into slavery, and then falsely imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit? Was God truly with him through it all, or was this a brutal, senseless journey of pain? In today's video, we're going to dive into this compelling mystery. We will uncover the profound spiritual truth hidden within Joseph's trials, a truth that might change how you view your own hardships forever. This isn't just a story about a man, it's a story about God's perfect plan, revealed not in comfort, but in the crucible of suffering. Prepare to be challenged, and prepare to be inspired. The narrative of Joseph's life is one of the most powerful and complete stories in the Old Testament, spanning Genesis chapters 37 through 50. It begins with a young, naive boy favored by his father, Jacob, and blessed with prophetic dreams that foreshadowed his future greatness. In a powerful sense, Joseph's story is a microcosm of the entire human condition, a journey from innocence to betrayal, from suffering to redemption, and from isolation to reconciliation. But beyond the simple plot points lies a profound theological truth. The Bible consistently teaches us that suffering is not a sign of God's abandonment. On the contrary, it is often the very tool he uses to shape our character and accomplish his greater purposes. As the Apostle Paul writes in Romans 5:3-4, we also have joy with our troubles, because we know that our troubles produce endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. Joseph's story is a living testament to this very principle. His trials were not random acts of fate, they were divinely orchestrated steps, a crucible in which God purified his heart and prepared him to be an instrument of salvation for his family and the entire region. The pain was real, but the purpose behind it was holy. The first stage of Joseph's suffering began not with a stranger, but with those closest to him, his brothers. Driven by envy and hatred for their father's favoritism, they plotted to kill him. Yet God's hand was subtly at work, even in their malicious hearts. Instead of a swift end, Reuben persuaded them to cast him into a pit, and from there, Joseph was sold to a caravan of Ishmaelites. This betrayal stripped him of his identity, no longer Jacob's favored son, but a slave property. This was the beginning of God's painful process of preparation. In Egypt, Joseph found himself in the house of Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh. Here, his character, refined by the trials he had faced, shone brightly. Genesis 39:4 ERV states, Potiphar was pleased with Joseph and made him his personal assistant. He put him in charge of his house and everything he owned. This wasn't an act of luck. It was God's providence. God used Joseph's new lowly position to teach him valuable lessons in management, humility, and trust. He was given authority, but within a framework of submission, a crucial test for the boy who once dreamt of ruling. Then came the ultimate test of his integrity. Potiphar's wife, driven by lust, falsely accused him. The result? Another descent, from the master's house to a dungeon. This was the moment where many would lose hope, questioning God's very presence. Yet Genesis 39:21 ERV tells us, but the Lord was with Joseph and showed him kindness. He gave Joseph favor with the warden of the prison. In the deepest, darkest moment of his life, Joseph was not alone. The Lord's presence was a palpable reality. The prison became his new classroom. Here, Joseph learned to rely entirely on God for everything, a lesson he could not have learned in the comfort of his father's home or the temporary security of Potiphar's household. He was learning to lead not from a position of power, but from a position of complete vulnerability. The journey from the pit to the palace was not a straight line. It was a painful and winding road, but every step was perfectly orchestrated to prepare him for the great work God had planned. Joseph's suffering was not just a trial of character. It was a divine assignment with a specific, world-saving purpose. God was using Joseph's experiences to not only shape him, but also to position him as a pivotal figure in a much larger narrative. His time in prison, seemingly a dead end, was in fact his graduate school. Here, he encountered Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and baker. By interpreting their dreams, Joseph honed a gift that would soon place him directly in front of the most powerful man on earth. His interpretation of Pharaoh's own dreams revealed an impending famine, and the wisdom he had gained through years of hardship was now the very tool needed to save a nation. Genesis 41:38 ERV records Pharaoh's astonished recognition of God's hand on Joseph's life. Pharaoh said to his officials, "We will never find a man like this. The Spirit of God is in him." Joseph's pain, his long-forgotten plight, had prepared him for this very moment. The years of isolation and humility allowed God to work in him, so that when the time came, Joseph was a vessel completely dependent on divine guidance, not human strength. The famine eventually drove Joseph's brothers to Egypt in search of food. Their past betrayal became the very means of their salvation, and through Joseph, God's promise to Abraham, to make him a great nation, was preserved. Joseph's powerful testimony to his brothers in Genesis 50:20 ERV encapsulates the entire theology of his story. You meant to do something bad to me, but God used it for good. He did this to save the lives of many people, as you can see today. This isn't just a feel-good phrase. It is the ultimate expression of a sovereign God who uses the evil intentions of men and the worst of human suffering to bring about his glorious and redemptive will. Joseph's pain was not a mistake. It was the necessary, ordained path to his divine destiny and the salvation of many. So, what does Joseph's story mean for us today? It shows us that God's perspective on our pain is radically different from our own. We see suffering as an obstacle or a punishment. God sees it as a powerful tool for preparation and purpose. The first practical step is to shift our focus from why me to what is God doing through this? This requires a deep, abiding trust in his sovereignty. Just as Joseph was learning to manage a household and a nation while in slavery and prison, God is often using our difficult seasons to equip us for the future. The humility we learn in our lowest moments is far more valuable than any worldly success we could achieve on our own. It's also a powerful reminder that our suffering is rarely just about us. God may be using your pain to bless others, just as Joseph's trials were for the salvation of his family and a nation. So, instead of despairing, we can pray for eyes to see the purpose in our pain, for a spirit of patience and endurance, and for the grace to trust that even in the darkest pit, God is with us and he is working all things for our good, Romans 8:28. This isn't just a passive acceptance of hardship. It's an active posture of faith that turns our trials into a testament to his faithfulness. Joseph's story is a timeless, living testament to the truth that God's ways are not our ways. His journey from a dreamer in a coat of many colors to a second in command of a global superpower was not an accident, but a masterfully orchestrated divine plan. We see that God did not simply save Joseph from his suffering. He saved him through it. The pit, the slavery, and the prison were not detours. They were the very path. They were the training ground where God stripped away his pride and taught him to depend on him alone, preparing him to be a vessel of salvation for his family and the world. So, the next time you face a season of hardship or a trial that seems to make no sense, remember Joseph. And remember his powerful words in Genesis 50:20 ERV. You meant to do something bad to me, but God used it for good. What if your current suffering is not a sign of God's absence, but the very place where he is preparing you for your divine destiny? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and may God bless your journey.